So as we were talking about salary, we discussed obviously knowing your minimum income required, knowing your desired income. And when I mean desired income, don't go crazy and say, well, yeah, I want to make $250,000. Be realistic based on your skill sets. And again, this is all a whole workshop, so keep this in context. If it's not giving you the actionable tools, it's my fault for not having probably more time with you. But hopefully we'll be able to do that in future workshops that will go through the whole process of assessing what are you really worth. And that's what I mean by your desired income. What are you worth professionally? If you were a product that is being sold on the shelf, what would people pay for the skills that you bring to the table, added to the experience, the military piece? All those things go into having a certain weighted average to come up with a number that is the realistic expectation that you should have employers give you should you go to a job, not including your retirement income or any other source of income. Some of us may have businesses on the side or do things like that. This is why I told you when you're on LinkedIn, you don't want to put there things like, business owner of this company. Because again, that tells the employer, well, what's your commitment to the company if you're selling these things or you're involved in this other company? You're not committed to them. Moving on with job satisfaction, this has 4 factors. Position and level. Sometimes just job satisfaction has to do with where do you feel that you are the most satisfied. Maybe you're more satisfied at the level where you can mentor people at the entry level, because you know that's the raw material, right? You always feel comfortable when people are willing to take from your experience as a military professional, as a veteran of many, many leadership opportunities. You will know how to influence people who are seeking, they're hungry for leadership. I'll tell you a quick story. When I was in Biloxi, Mississippi, helping with the Katrina relief, one of the things that I was shocked about is how people will flock to the uniform guys that were there versus the FEMA guys. Big FEMA on the back, FEMA hats. No offense to FEMA. I have nothing good or bad to say about it. I'm indifferent. But the fact is, they see a guy in uniform or a guy in uniform, guess what they think? You must know what to do. Tell us what to do. Organize us. Give us some direction. And almost by nature, your body starts moving and you start pointing at things and your lips start moving and you start giving directions. All of a sudden you find yourself as the self-appointed mayor of the new town in the middle of nowhere because they can't rely on anybody else. It's amazing, but it happens. So the virtue of your experience will automatically make people be attracted to your professional skills. Be very diligent with that. Some people go too far and let that get out of hand, or they don't realize that sometimes that leadership is so attractive and so magnetic that it could create a very bad situation for us. And so you have to be very careful as to always maintain a position that they're expecting you to have. Don't forget that. Because as a leader, they want you to remain in that position, but there's always going to be one or a situation that's going to make you want to fall off that podium, if you will. And you want to be very careful to always remember, stay center. Stay center, because that's where they need you. If that's what you're looking for that level and that position. I wanted to make that comment because, again, that is also the pitfall of those who seek leadership positions. They forget that the reason why they enjoy that is because you are imparting some level of experience from your past, from your military, and they want to continue to see you as that image of leadership resource. Don't get too personal. Okay? Don't get too caught up in the, I'll tell you everything you need to know about your life, because that's not the case. Give them the room to learn, but also help them develop themselves. Upward mobility. Sometimes we take a position because we know that the possibility of growing into that company or being able to be promoted is much greater than if we just try to go for, and we were talking about this on the break, if you want to go work for one of the big companies, what are your chances of actually moving up? If you go work for a small company that's up and coming, or a company that you may feel has a potential to grow and they need people like you probably are more likely to get to an executive position much faster than if you try to work 20 years in a company where management probably never knows your name. It's a fact. So assess that in your decision matrix. What kind of upward mobility are you looking for? Are you looking for none? We discussed earlier that there are people who are very satisfied to go to work every day for 20 years doing the same thing, and that gives them joy. We have to respect that, and I respect that, because it's got to be a very fulfilling feeling to have that opportunity to just do that one thing you like. Go home, herd your sheep, or ride your horses, or get on your boat, and just be able to say, I don't have to deal with people. I was talking to a lady yesterday whose husband is up for a GS-15 position, but he will not take it because that means he has to manage people. He wants to stay in his position, which is a technical position, because he enjoys not having the responsibility of managing people. And that is very important when you're looking at upward mobility. Career progression. Is this something that you want to do, again, because of salary, but there's no career progression? Because, you know, we figured in the military, it's kind of set for us. It's an automatic process, right? We get promoted automatically, unless you do something wrong, and we get increased responsibility. In some cases, we get to get out of our jobs, go do something cool, or do something like being a linguist, or do something like go on recruiting, and we get trained for some things like that. But for the most part, our military careers are set in a pattern based on the hierarchy of the organization where they want us to grow, right? We need this many E1s to grow, you know, this many E9s. And the same thing on the officer side. And our pyramids are different for different services. But for the most part, your career is programmed. What we don't get out of transition classes is, so what does your career progression look like? Where do you want to be 20 years from now? 10 years from now? Have you thought about that? Have you thought about when you are 40, 50, 60, where do you want to be? And if your decision for that particular job doesn't take you there, you need to go back to the drawing board. It's a tough thing to do, don't get me wrong, because you're thinking, well, I'll do this for a year or two, and then I'll change. And you find out 5 years later, you're still in the same place because you got stuck. I make this analogy with, I know a lot of people who have immigrated to this country. Obviously, from living in Ecuador, I always get friends that say, hey, so listen, I'm thinking about going to live in Miami. What do you think I should do? The first thing I tell them is, don't stay in Miami. I'm going to go to LA. I got a cousin there who's going to help me get a job. Don't trust your cousin. What does your cousin do? Oh, he works at this place. You know, he parks cars. Let me give you some advice. Don't take financial advice from broke people. I learned that in my real estate classes. I do real estate too. And it was funny because it makes sense, right? But you always hear people say, oh, don't buy that house. Just don't buy the house. The market is bad. Do you have a house? No, but that's why I haven't bought a house, because I know it's... Don't listen to financial advice from broke people. Don't ask people who don't have a job for job advice. Okay? If you really want to have some good advice, ask people who have moved 5 times from job to job. Ask people who have experience transitioning from one career to the next. I was talking to Reggie here earlier. His story was interesting because he was a Marine, did combat engineers for a while, then transitioned into computers. Now he's doing video. I mean, he's found his niche, and he continues to grow. But again, he probably had to go through his own transition process, learn something from his transition. From Betty, what she did in her 3 years in the military in the Women's Corps, Women's Army Corps, and getting out and transitioning to what she did to get her here. PhD now? Is that correct? What do you do now? I have to ask you.
I'm the web manager and scientific and technical photographer for Ditcher.
That's what it was, a scientific technical photographer. I was trying to figure out, how do you get to that level? And again, you find your path over a period of time to define what it is that you know you want to do. How they got here has to do with that process. Use those experiences to help you figure out what career progression you want to have. Sometimes you want to experience the opportunity to do those 5 jobs that people transition to before you decide to really go back home and take on your dad's shop or start your own business. Sometimes you have to experience that, and if that's what you want to do, there is no wrong answer. But the key is that you have that plan in place and accept the fact that your transition process will include that. I have a friend, I was talking to Jake earlier about, gentleman he knows, I know a friend that had the same experience, which is he basically was at the top of his career. He figured, hey, I'm going to get a job. Got out for 3 months, couldn't find a job. Got depressed, was mad at the world. You get this. I mean, I really know somebody who actually did this. Was really frustrated that nobody was really, doing what they said they would do when he was in. Because when you're in, oh yeah, I got a job for you, definitely. Let me know when you get out. It's almost like saying, I'll call you. Same thing, right? I'll call you. Nothing happened for 3 months. And he ended up taking a job that we had discussed earlier when we were both in the service, that he should take that job. No, I'm not taking that job. I'm not going to do that. I don't want to do that. But you're good at it. That's what you like. You're happy when you do this stuff. Nah, I want to do something different. He ended up doing the same job that we thought he wouldn't do. Job security. I put this in here because a lot of us really want to have that job security. Look, I don't want to be an entrepreneur. I don't want to have to go from contract to contract as an employer with an employer that's always laying me off if I don't have a contract. Oh, I'm always wondering every 2 or 3 years if I'm going to get laid off. I just want a job that I can do for the next 20 years. I want to be a GS employee, which is really something much more secure than obviously being a contractor. It's hard work as well, but it's more secure, job security. Or I'm going to go take over some job back home that they've offered me, and I'll be happy there. It is very, very important to assess how much of a job security do you need. You may have family members with disabilities, FMP I think they call it. You may have a requirement to just stay close to home because mom may be getting to an age that she's in critical condition. And you need that job security. Maybe you have debt that you really have to pay off, and you really have to take a job that's going to be consistent. It's going to bring money consistent. Maybe you're divorced and you're paying child support. There's so many variables. So you have to assess that in your decision, because if you don't, you're going to fail to really come up with the right decision for you as you move from this career to the next. Because again, this system, this is the greatest thing in the world, the military system, because we don't have to worry about when we get paid. We're not going to get laid off. Even if Congress shuts down, you're still going to get paid. And you know where your money's coming from, at least until you get out. And then if you're lucky enough to retire, you get a check for life. Well, at least that's what we continue to hope for, right, until something changes. Benefits and all that other great stuff. So you're leaving this great nest, if you will. It's really a great shelter to come out into the real world and say, what now? And the real world is everybody for themselves. I didn't believe it. I've been a Simplify guy forever. And, everybody's trying to make it. Everybody's trying to get to the next point. But the greatest plan that you can exercise in your transition strategy is obviously to assess, from a job satisfaction perspective, what do you think is going to be the most important thing for you? Finally, location. Sometimes you want to stay put. And I'll tell you, that was my experience. I retired last year. I said, honey, we're not going to move anywhere. We wanted to move out west to Colorado Springs, something like that. Let's do one thing at a time. Let's get out of the military, minimize the friction for the family, stay put for a year or two, see how I adapt, how the family adapts, and then decide what's the next step. So step 2 now would be, let's figure out where we want to move. Now, again, let's say our financial situation is stable. We've transitioned out of the military. All right? I even try to go a little bit of facial hair to pretend that I'm actually a full civilian. I can't get rid of the whole high. I don't know. The barber keeps going the same length as before. But again, sometimes you want to do something temporary to get yourself transitioned and not make that. Some make an abrupt decision. Again, it could be good for them, but for me, it was a matter of doing it in stages, where I can actually say, okay, phase 1, transition, financial stability, job stability, growth, all those things that were important for me. Then now let's talk about where do we want to move while the kids are still young. My oldest is 11 years old. My youngest are 2 and 4-year-olds. And so we want to be somewhere where the kids are going to be middle school. That's not the same situation for everybody. Some of my friends have teenagers, kids in college, and for them, again, job security was key. They wanted to stay put. They wanted to do full transition, stay put, and be done. And get those kids through, and then move on to the next stage of their life, which is where the wife and him get to go travel. Permanent, that's where you got somebody that says, you know what? It doesn't matter what salary I make, and it doesn't matter what job I make, what job I get. I want to go live in Montana. I love Montana. I got 60 acres there. I've been trying to get back there. You know this because every time they get a vacation leave time or PTA, they go back home, and they love to stay there. And so it's very important to identify that trigger, that you know you want to go back home. Don't worry about the job. If you know that your heart is back home or in that state or that last post that you were in, I know friends that love Germany. They could not leave Germany even if Germany went red again. I'm telling you, they stay there. They love it. I can imagine living out of the United States. Some people would love to go live on an island somewhere down south. But you know, that's the beauty about understanding your transition and understanding which of these factors are going to be the most important to you. Because one of those factors will make you the most happy. And if you can assess that, and assess whether it's temporary, permanent, family from location, or the job market that leads you there, you need to figure out what's the most important thing for you. Which one of these three factors are going to be the most important factor in your transition strategy? Because I'll tell you this, you can have one, maybe two if you're lucky, but you cannot have three. You can get the job satisfaction, location, or any combination thereof, but you cannot have all three. You cannot have the salary you want, in the place you want, and the job satisfaction. Again, there's an exception to every rule. There'll be somebody who says, whoa, 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 I disagree. I think I have everything. I have the job I love my job, I make the money I can. Yes, those are called motivational speakers. All right? And there's plenty of those. But for us mortals, the guys who really just love the action, we always struggle with one. We're always going to have one that we're trying to. If you're lucky enough to have all three, God bless you. And there's a lot to say for the ability to balance those three. But if you really try to say the salary you want and the job you want and the location you want, it's very hard. And I would almost say impossible to actually achieve all those three. Because those are in competition with each other. So assess that early on and you will be successful. Now this is very small fun here. But what I wanted to show you here is my resume. This is the final resume that I composed. And I'll give you the highlights here so you understand what you're seeing here. Obviously my name there. My clearance is right below it. My information. And I say one thing that I would probably change is not putting my address there. I would probably put the state. Because again, what can you do nowadays with an address? I can go to Xylo, find out not only where you live, but if you own it and how much you paid for it and when did you pay for that property. Okay? So I leave it here to show you my obvious standard. You know, everybody wants to have their address, their phone numbers, and their email address. Here's the objective. Right at the top, what was my objective? I had an objective back then that reads, to accept a position as a leading consultant or executive manager in the areas of foreign language training, cultural adaptation, immersion, or regional knowledge program to create a unique and effective human capability set in support of mission objectives both in the military, private, and public sector. Sounds like a mission statement, really. But it was kind of to say, this is what I'm seeking. Any resume that you put together should entail the very first thing is your objective. What do you want? You know, an employer wants to know, so what do you want? I see resumes of all types. And the resumes come in different flavors, shapes, different colors, believe it or not. Some more flowery than others. I haven't gotten a scented resume, but I heard those actually float around. When you actually, I've heard of, when I was interviewing with some people, I always, after the interview, I would ask, what could I have done better, is what I asked them. And in one of those conversations we got to, well, we're glad that you didn't bring us a flowery resume. And I found out that somebody had brought in something with the scent. I don't know if they got somewhere that you can send it to inspire hiring, or I don't know. But the point is, the most basic of resumes that are more effective have an objective at the top. Because everybody wants to know what do you want, because if we can't get you what you want, then what's the point? Because you may be applying for a job, and that's what the cover letter is supposed to do. But I will tell you, out of all the resumes, over 500 that I actually reviewed, the most effective format that I found was this 2-page resume, where in the first page by itself, if you don't have this page here, if they only get to this page, they will be able to see my objective, my summary of qualifications, my core competencies in my military career, boom, in a systematic way. And to give you an idea, these bullets here relate to the professional accomplishments there. I took one bullet and I put it there. So if they never get to my second page, this is my executive resume. When they ask me for my executive resume, boom, there's my page 1. If they're interested in what I did and how this relates, they can go to my professional experience right up here. Professional experience in education, down there. Simple, to the point. The 4 jobs that I thought will be effective for this particular job opportunity. And in here, my summary of qualifications, I put in quantitative information. Not this, I'm a great leader, and when the sun comes up, it salutes me. That's the fluffy stuff, right? We're talking about quantifiable stuff that shows numbers. I think I put something here. Possesses a wide range of foreign culture experience through career assignments over 20 countries, including Japan, Korea, Colombia, Turkey, blah, blah, blah. Things that you can speak to in your resume, because you better be able to talk to those things. Put in some quantifiable information. Achieve this, such level of proficiency or profit margins that equate to the private sector. That's what they want to see. Right below, notice I put this right below my objective. Right away, I want them to know, look what I've accomplished. And right after that, well, what are my core competencies? Because they want to know, so what can you do? I put in, well, leadership. And here, led a staff of 125 plus Marines, quantifiable. Problem solving. And in there it's got operation response to humanitarian capability. And we talked about Biloxi, Mississippi, and also down in Colombia. Innovation, team building, communication. I mean, these are kind of general core things, but if you can bring them into your true experience, and they're going to reflect, these and these are going to come in over here. You have a genuine, solid resume that could wipe out every other format that people have, different fluffiness. And again, if you want a copy of the format or you want to see this, email me. It's on LinkedIn. It's posted on LinkedIn. You can look at it there. And down here is my military career, 1990 through 2011. And look, I put things like program manager, senior operations planner, tactical operations planner, logistics officer, things, maintenance management officer, things that they can relate to that I thought would spark. Again, I was going for either language or logistics or a combination of both. How you use the words you use, again, it's a topic for another subject, another workshop. But in the end, they go to explain the capabilities that you bring to the table as a professional. What skills that you can leverage based on some quantifiable information, the core competencies that you're going to actually be able to bring to the organization. Again, related to the organization. Because if you're really interested in this job, you will go and do your research and map the requirements of the position. And this is something that I got to tell you, I didn't do as effectively. But I can't tell you how much I appreciate it now. When I get a resume and I'm looking for a Russian linguist for a NASA proposal, and I see worked on NASA projects, but it's almost like it's talking to me. It's like, oh, how did you, that's a perfect candidate. And then he does another little bullet somewhere that talks about work with Russian officials on projects relating to NASA program. Wow, I can't wait to interview this guy. They really map it back to the position description. If you really want a position in a certain company, don't be afraid to use that language. Because see, every hiring manager, me included, is looking for that golden nugget, that one individual who's going to show me why they, everybody's going to tell me what they have, their stock resume. They're going to put it out there, email it to me, boom. And I'm going to spend the time to go look at the clearance that sits there. I'm going to knock down some points for that. I'm going to probably go map their house maybe. I don't know. I mean, try to figure out why is this guy applying for a job in Virginia if they're in Texas? Are you going to move? You see where I'm going? So make sure your resume maps back to that particular job requirement. Go to the specific skills and must have, like a degree. And I'm baffled by some people who, it says right there, bachelor's degree required. And they argue with me. Oh, but sir, you do realize that 20 years experience in the military is more than enough for a college degree. I said, I get it. I would take you over any recent college graduate. But guess what? Guess who wants the college degree? The client who I'm writing the proposal for. It's required. They want a bachelor's degree and they fight me. But how can they do? I have worked in this field for 20 years. I know this better than any college graduate that can't even figure out how to spell the acronym. It doesn't matter. You got to have the college degree. Beats me. It was frustrating on one opportunity that I had. This guy had actually worked in that agency. Came out, and they were looking to replace him with a civilian contractor. He couldn't qualify for the position. Wait till you experience some of this great stuff. It happens. Because see, a college degree also says a couple of things. Just like we need a high school diploma to get into the military, right? It says you have finished something. Also, it talks about writing skills. I mean, my personal opinion about college degree is this. What a college degree gets you is the ability to say that you can articulate things on paper if you're lucky. I mean, if you really went through college and weren't sleeping through the whole time. You can dissect a problem and create a thesis statement and argue your point. It's a problem-solving academy, if you will. Now, if you ask me, what do I remember from those undergraduates that you know, the first time I was able to say, oh yeah, computer information systems, don't ask me about it because I have no idea. I don't remember much of it. It was 12 years ago. But again, it's a credential on the table. So you have to have those. So make sure those are not only included, I have them down here in the resume, but that you write to that in the position. If it requires, have a undergraduate degree in XYZ if that's what it requires. Because you want to, again, if you can do that 3 times in your resume, capture requirements from that job posting and put them into your, all you have to do is modify a sentence or 2. And I assure you, if you don't get the job, you will certainly be one of the 2 candidates who are best qualified for it. It is an impressive technique that very few people use it. I'm always impressed when somebody sends me a resume that tells me, it almost reads like, it's like they're perfect. Because see, now I take that resume and I can put it into the proposal. And when the client reads it, it's like, that's exactly what we were looking for. Everybody says exactly what we're looking for. It's no different than matching an MOS to a job, right? We don't send an 1842 to a job that requires a different code, MOS. We call it MOS, Military Operational Specialty. We just don't send a combat engineer to a computer systems billet, unless he's that good, unless he's you, right, Wal? I mean, we select the right people for that job, and that's what the employers want to do. So have your template. I would say have at least 3 resumes. And this is painful because I hated the resume part. This is the worst part of transitioning. But if I could tell you one thing, get that done early on. And then have 3 of them. Have one with everything on it. Like your master resume, right? That has everything that you can think of that you're just write from stream of consciousness. Everything in chronological order. And then have an executive resume. And from those two, you can draft a specialized resume, a functional resume that basically goes to describe you in a specific job requirement. I promise you, it's very unlikely that you won't get the call for that interview if you write to that requirement. It's obvious. And even when somebody didn't qualify and they wrote to the requirement, I still wanted to try to fit them into that job because I thought, well, then why did they put this in here? They were just too good. At that point, because when you interview people, you got to make sure that you obviously prove what you say you can do, right? You can't just BS it or bluff and think that's going to fly. It's not going to fly. But you want to write to it to make sure that it is effective. Business cards. This is the business card that I had made originally. You guys have my current business card. And what I like about business cards is that it tells a story, right? Some business cards are generic, but at least I tend to think that the business card is you staying behind to let that person think about why they should hire you. If you go to an interview, have a business card. Now, I got great advice about business cards. My first business card actually had a Marine Corps emblem on it. It screamed Marine Corps. It was just scarlet and gold. Hoorah, all the way. Arrgh. And sometimes that's a turnoff, right? My second business card, I lost the logo. I had a very interesting feedback from somebody who said, why don't you put some of your resume pieces on the back? Huh, never thought of that, like a mini resume. Not so much everything, but see, remember, you got your resume here. Why don't you put your core competencies? Just in bullet statement. Core competencies, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Available date, April 2011. Because people can see your business card, look at your information, right? I have my LinkedIn profile. I don't know if I have it here. Let me check real quick. It doesn't have it has my name, my title, my website, my email address, phone number, and website. And this is obviously my business prior to this one. But my transition business card had my name, my phone number, my email, my LinkedIn profile link. And on the back, I figured I'd go ahead and put in my core competencies and my available date. Because people say, okay, great, I like it. When can you start? Not for 3 months. That would have been nice to know. So I put my available date right there, your terminal date. Whatever you can do to go on terminal early. That's key because employers want to know right away how fast can they get you. And if you can't be available within 30 days or 60 days, it becomes an issue because they can't just hire you for 6 months away. Unless you're lucky enough to, unless a position is going to take about 6 months to actually come to fruition. I'm talking about contracting work. Private sector, they usually have positions ready to go. They want people now, and you have to be in that billet right away. But these are just generic bullets. Obviously, keep it simple. Make it different enough to capture and retain attention. That's why I built this card. This one has a QR code. So all you got to do is scan it with your phone. A lot of people say, oh, well, they have viruses now. Well, great. Okay, one more thing I have to change. But the idea is that my business card now has a QR code that allows you to scan it and has my name and phone number and email that goes right on your phone. And it's very simple. Name, title, phone number. You want to know more about me, call me, email me, and we can talk. But again, this is my business card. For my transition card, I had the ability to be available. And again, this resume piece was effective for me because it allowed people to say, okay, we're definitely looking for somebody with those skills. Pictures are not always appropriate. Yes, I know that now, so the Marine Corps emblem had to go. Include this information here. Use a font size large enough. Sometimes you want to fit so much information that you make it very small. If you want to just get a basic business card and you want to do it right, and again, I'm not a spokesperson, but one of the places I use is vistaprint.com. There's many places like that, but I can get those cards easily, cheap, and quick from Vistaprint. And again, it allowed me to leave that business card behind. I didn't do it at the beginning of the interviews because I wanted the effect of the resume to have a specific impact on the people. I wanted to have a different impact when I left. Say, here's my card. Please call me when you make a decision. That kind of put them on the spot and said, this guy's expecting a call. Not only that, but I emailed them back as soon as I was back. Said, thank you, you do the thank you thing, the etiquette piece. And then you let them know that you'll be available to discuss any helpful hints for any other interviews that you can give them. Now, to them, it might have sounded like, what do you mean other interviews? It says you're available and you're not just waiting for them. It also said to me, because that was my interest, I want to know what you thought about this interview. I want you to grade me. Because my intent in the interviews was to learn. What could I do better? Because I was getting ready for the playoffs. To me, all those things were just great summer camp training. Right? In the interview process, I can tell you, I can't remember most of those interviews from those 47 because to me, the last 3 or 4 were really the ones that, were the playoffs to make sure that I could say, okay, can I get the job? And that's where I got those offers. I was very successful, I think, I was successful in getting people to tell me what could I have done better. Notice I didn't say, what did I do wrong? I didn't ask them what did I do wrong. I said, what can I do better next time? Where did you think that my answer didn't fit the question? I asked them questions that gave them the latitude to respond without being compromised. Because again, sometimes they have to be very careful with what they say because they think, for legal matters they can't answer certain things and they get very sensitive to that stuff. So you have to ask the question in a way that allows them to really give you an answer that you need. Say, I would love to get your feedback on how can I improve in future interviews. Did I look nervous to you? See, again, a couple of employers didn't want to answer that because they felt like I would use that as discrimination for why I didn't get the job. So that's why you build a good rapport when you're doing your interview and making sure that they know that, hey, here's the business card. Please call me. Let me know what you think. Utilize the back of your card to make an impact. Again, some people will put a little motto in there, or some quote, or some reference to something that they feel is special to them. Remember I said, think in terms of others. Why should they care? So what? On everything you do in your transition, ask yourself the question, so what? So you will have all these credentials, so what? Why should I care as an employer? Oh, you should care because I got a TSSEI. You should care because I worked in these countries. You should care because XYZ. Welcome the opportunity for somebody to say, so what? Do some interviews internally with people that you trust and say, hey, can you really grill me through this process? There's plenty of ways to have interviews online that you can just have somebody give you questions and practice through those things. Recruiting sites have the same thing that you can actually use to train yourself in this process. But nothing beats time on task. Get out there, do some interviews just because. It'll be the most successful training thing that you'll ever do for your transition. Make a budget. Again, we talked about this in terms of what you should have for expenses, but we didn't talk about what would be your monthly expenses during your transition and after your transition, 3 months afterwards. Make a budget to assess what's going to happen. Figure out how's your debt going to change. If you have debt, whether it's car, homes, personal loans, college loans, the emergency fund is depleted. Some people go all the way through between their terminal leave and their actual retirement date, or when they exit and they get a servant's pay, they blow that money and never have a plan after that. You should be able to say, I'm going to assume that I don't have this money and see how I can start earning money right away. Because that's going to be your safety stock if something doesn't go your way. Instead of blowing and say, well, I'm going to take the vacation I never took another time I was in the military. Well, that'll be the last vacation you ever take. And of course, expected cost of living. The cost of living increase that you may experience may be different in Milwaukee than it is here in Virginia, right? You may live on $5 up there No offense, it's just probably more happy living, less things to spend your money on than up here in close to D.C. where the cost of living is so high that you automatically have to make more money. Consider that in your job decision. Sometimes moving to a different state could be a greater quality of life for the kind of salary that you still want. For example, I do also individual assessments for people. I do personalized type of training. And one of the things they told me is, I got this job offer, I think it was, I don't want to say Kentucky, I think it was in Ohio. It must be a little farther to, Idaho. And they were in Florida. And in Florida, they wanted no less than $85,000. Okay? And so they figured, hey, I'm going to take this job in Idaho, and if they don't pay me 85, but I said, but is 85 in Idaho the same as 85 in Miami? Well, of course, it's dollars. No, it's not. It is not. And we looked at some sites, and we did some assessment, and we realized that 85 in Florida is actually 62 in Idaho. And the offer that they had made this person was $64,000. That was above her ceiling. I mean, she was willing to take 75 to 85. And when they said 64, it was a no-go. Again, cost of living. Could have lived very well because, see, the average salary where she was going was, I think, 35, 40,000. So when you're talking about 64,000, again, you ask yourself, we're so used to living in a certain place of the States or a certain appeal because of the environment that we're used to that we don't think that you can afford waterfront property somewhere in Texas for half the price that you can afford if you try to do it in Virginia Beach. A $1.2 million house in Virginia Beach, a shack with a half an acre, 1.2. In Texas, is 100 acres on a home that's just been built that looks like a mansion, which nobody needs. Even with 5 kids, I wouldn't know what to do with that. You know, 250,000, 300,000, 400,000. They're going like this. Again, it's crazy. Again, you heard this, right? Real estate is all about location, location, location. So assess that, the cost of living in your budget, and don't be shy about exploring other places where you might actually be happier. It's always hard for people to go with location. Is the least preferred option when they make a decision for transition. And I found that it is the most satisfying one. When you hear people that are moving to some crazy place in the United States, like, why are you doing that? Are you crazy? Do they even have internet out there? It's like, well, I never heard of that. Is that in the U.S.? But they're happy. And then you go visit them 5 years later, and you're like, wow, this is all yours? No, actually, can't see it. Got to take you on the golf cart. We got to drive out there. It's amazing. I'm not making this up, but you know, assess your cost of living, and of course your unexpected expenses. What do I mean by that? When you transition, you have some unexpected expenses, whether it's suits that you have to buy that you never had because we're used to being in uniform. We don't have to worry about that. Suits, how much do they cost? Gas, where you're going to be driving to that you didn't have to drive before. You know, some of us get to live on base, and it's a 5-10 minute drive. And now we're going to have to move off base and go an hour. Some of us still live off base and have to drive an hour. I know people who live in Richmond and work north of D.C. or live in Baltimore.
Do they drive or take the train?
I have no clue. I'm sure it's a combination of both. I don't know many that actually fly in. I know the former owner of I think it's B.F. Goodrich. No, what's that blue and yellow tire company with 3 letters? No, BLG or NTB. The owner of NTB lives across the pond from Occoquan. It has his own helipad. Now that's the kind of life you want to have, right? Or waterfront, you know, live down in Fredericksburg, but boat to Quantico. Or boat to Occoquan. But some people will go as far as living in the... I know most of the people I know live in Fredericksburg, but work up here. And even farther down, Spotsylvania, because that's all they can afford. Look how far you have to go just to get to the job that you feel that you need to, that you love. And I was doing the math. I mean, when I was looking for a job, I was going to take a job here in D.C., and I live near Quantico. 2 hours in traffic every day, right? 2 hours in traffic every day, that's standard, right? That's 10 hours a week versus taking a job, forget it, being on my own, in just those 10 hours that I could never have back, spend them on something more beneficial like supporting fellow veterans and being satisfied with having a conservative income that I can live with. I'm very happy, I got to tell you, that I didn't take that job. But that's one experience. Some people enjoy the idea of driving, listening to their music, having the decompression time before they get back home. And that's important to them. And we have to respect that. But all that goes back to what is the cost of you making that decision? Because sometimes you want to get the salary, but you don't realize how much it costs you to actually take that job. There's a lot of components here that I really hope that we get to in the military as a transition plan that allows us to really empower. Just like we train on the rifle range, grenade launch. I mean, we never send somebody out there without the proper training, right? Graduate from the school, you've been certified that you are actually able to operate that machinery, or that you can actually fly this or drive that or do this. But when we transition out, it's supposed to be common sense, and it's not. It's just something, there's a lot of factors that are involved in transitioning. And forgive me if I'm boring you to death with this, but I got to tell you, it is so important that you have a realistic perspective of what you're going to see when you get out, because it all looks good from this vantage point. Our military position of active duty right now, you can be here, you can be anywhere else, you're getting paid the same amount. In the real world, if you're not where you're supposed to be at the time you're supposed to be, take that hour off. You're not getting paid for that hour. Or if you're an entrepreneur, you better be at your business doing your job and developing your work. Nonprofit, same thing. If you're going to school, you better be at school. There's a lot of different factors that involve. And so, sorry that this is so little, but I'll give you a quick description of what you're seeing here. Over here, you see total expenses. On the top line is total expenses. And these are fake numbers that come from the addition of all of these. These are my itemized expenses: birthdays, bring security, car fuel, car maintenance. This is literally, and I mean this, my budget from home. Food, gas, gift 1, gift 2, gymnastics, hair, nails, that's my wife, haircuts, health club, HOA, home security, home warranty, obviously in alphabetical order. Yes, I am a planning freak. Let that not be a mistake. I am. Pet, movies, school supply, school tuition, sporting events, family vehicle, toys, truck, car insurance, internet, phone, water. Extracurricular activities. So the addition of these come to do the total expense. This is a cash short or extra. That's a formula that's calculated from salary, retirement, and again, all these are fake numbers. There's no way I make that much money. I wish. And this is a total income. From total expenses, obviously, there's no way that my expenses add up to $28,000 and I only make 10. So that's January, February, March. I wanted to have it in one sheet so I can look at my year and be able to plan ahead, a financial plan. Now, I'm not a financial planner. Yes, I have a degree in managerial accounting, but that has nothing to do with my obsession with understanding what do I need. Because see, one of the things I had to figure out is if I lose my job, the salary, I even gave me a bump of $4,000 from January to February. If I lose my job, how does that affect my budget? That can be a very stressful situation in your family, in your home situation. If you think about most of the reasons why we have issues at home is because of the financial stress. Some of us live paycheck to paycheck. Some of us are not sure how the money is being spent, and we wonder, why are we short this month? How can we save? We go to the commissary, we try to save on fuel, but our budget planning is not there. And then the stress comes when you transition. Remember I said transition, you already have to experience the stress of not having a secure job. You're not going to your former office or place of work. It's a new environment. You are the new guy or the new gal. You are the person that has to perform. It's your first day on the job. Wife and kids are still doing the same thing. See, now the roles are reversed. Usually we take them around and they have to adapt to all of the places that we go to when we PCS. Now you get to adapt and see the stress that compresses your emotions, and you start, cranking. That gets torqued more and more, and all of a sudden you're thinking, why did I do this? The pressure, all this affects you even more when you don't have a budget. A plan that says, what am I looking to do? How am I expected to survive? And can I do it on worst case scenario? I'll run real quick through business attire. This is basic. And I will tell you my personal opinion on this. Again, there's no wrong. There's no wrong. If I got a guy who is so highly qualified, but has a very colorful, let's say has flowery tie and a striped suit with a checkerboard shirt and some crazy shoes. Are we good? You almost overlook that if you think he's the most qualified and you really want that guy. But I will tell you, generally speaking, you want to dress conservative when you go to a job interview. It seems kind of common sense and second nature. It's not. Light suit or dark suit, white shirt or color, solid tie or pattern tie. What kind of shoes? What if the interviewers are not in a suit? What kind of job is it? Is it supposed to be a job where you're supposed to wear a suit, or you're going to be walking through the plant to talk about some of the management that you're required to do? Like, remember I told you that position at Amazon.com in the warehouse? Did you go in a suit? Hey, I made that mistake. I went in a suit. We went through the plant. I was like, I should have dressed in a, sort of business casual. It's not as easy. Well, you can't go wrong with wearing the dark suit, the white shirt, the red tie, which obviously connotates, that tends to, people say power tie, right? Red, a solid yellow for, what's yellow supposed to represent? The golden yellow. Kind of gave it away right there. Prestige, money. Right? Blue, more conservative. All those things. Sometimes people go with the pen, the Marine Corps pen. I didn't do that, by the way. Or they go with the American flag. It all has its pros and cons. I'm not saying anything is right or wrong. It's preference. But an employer wants to know what package they're getting. And if you go with the dark suit, solid tie. When in doubt, go with a solid tie. Don't do pattern. Don't do flowers. Don't do funky designs. Don't do holiday ties, please. I'm telling you, this happened. This happened. I had an interview. Oh, man. And this guy was wearing this. It was a patriotic tie. I got to love it. I mean, I was hoorah all the way, but I'm sitting next to him. We're going to do an interview, and he's got this patriotic tie, and it's got an eagle with some stuff in the back and the American flag surrounding it. You got to give him some credit for really being all American, right? But I'm thinking, not the place. Not the place. I saw somebody who went to an interview with these very pointy shoes. I mean, these things look like, I literally think of like half boots. You know how they have those, I don't know what they call those things, but these things, they're humongous. I thought, and I saw, not that their foot is big, it's like the point just kept going. This thing kept going to a tip of a spear. And you think that they don't notice? Because I ask in the interviews, what do you think is the worst dress? I mean, I would ask, and they tell me crazy stuff. Like people wearing these feathered earrings. Hey, look, tradition, culture, whatever it may be, it's there. Hey, if you want to go to an interview to say, here's who I am, either you take me or you don't, guess what they're going to say? We may not. That may be too much. Because if that's what you're dressing for the interview, I can't wait to see you once we hire you. I would ask things like, what's a better suit? I say, well, we've had some, suits that what's it called? What's that called? It looks like the one that wraps over. I mean, those double-breasted. I mean, again, think about what you're going to do. When you got a double-breasted and you look so spiffed up that, well, you can afford that? Why are you coming here for a job that is at a plant or in a manager position? I mean, we want people who are real. If you are dressing way above what you know you should be, it's natural. If you're trying to impress with the outfit, it could backfire. If you're going to a fashion magazine and you're trying to get a job as one of the editors and maybe the double-breasted suit is something that really makes sense there, do it. Just know the audience. I didn't hesitate to call. I had an interview in, it was a Indian name up in, I want to say Wisconsin, for, who was it? Can't remember the company. And I called him, I said, hey, how should I dress for this interview? The secretary, right? Said, well, what have you seen candidates do? Never hesitate to ask the secretary, the person you're talking to on email, as long as it's not the person interviewing you, hey, what would you recommend that I wear to these interviews? I know you have some great stories. Would you share one with me? They'll love to have a little comic relief moment. Everybody loves the opportunity to talk, right? Give them that chance to tell you all the intel you want to know. And I can go through these basic attire pieces, obviously no earrings, get a haircut, trim fingernails, polished dress shoes in dark color. But the bottom line is this: go dressed as if you were going to go to work in that company. If you're going to apply for a company, say Deloitte, and you know you're going to be in the building, dress the way you know they're going to be dressed. If you're going to be working, let's say you want to get a job back in this building, look around. What are people wearing? I was going for another interview at a company in Alexandria, and they hired this guy who wore $400 suits to work. Nobody in the company wears a suit. In fact, the only time they wear a suit is when a client comes to the building. It's a secure building. It's one of those companies that you never hear name. They work for specific clients. And this guy was the BD guy, the business development guy. He had these $400 suits, and he felt like this is how you're going to reach the clients and show them that, look at this. Don't you want to be part of this? No. But the perception people get is that they want to have those suits that the suit tells them who they are. Dress appropriate to the interview. I do a whole workshop on this, and I ask people, bring 2 different outfits and be prepared to get some feedback from the crowd, and you'd be surprised how common the feedback is. You cannot fake when somebody brings a tie that has these weird patterns. It's sort of purple and gold, and you're trying to figure out, so how does that balance a suit? And it's not me, it's the crowd saying, what would you think right off the bat when you have, now, is it a beautiful tie? You bet the design is great. Beautiful tie, expensive tie, silk, just not appropriate. Unfortunately, they want to see things like, look on the board. I mean, that's how you dress when you want to project an image of serious, mature, experienced attitude. If you're trying to go for a different job, again, dress appropriately. I had an interview on a Friday. On a Friday, it was out of town, and this company was sort of a laid back. I wore a sports jacket, a dress shirt, no tie, jeans, not faded, dress shoes. I got that tip from the secretary. He said the CEO loved jeans. He wore jeans all the time. Oh, guess what I wore? I wore jeans. I still wore a very eloquent combination, but I had my jeans. It showed that I'm not trying to impress. I mean, the CEO was very, very laid back. And he was the guy that was going to be interviewing all of the candidates. And I felt, comfortable. I think at the end of the presentation, it was clear that at least I captured some of the intent. I got the offer. I was happy. But, again, it was all about how to dress. Friday, right? Dress down Friday. Also not dressed down like Hawaiian party Friday. But, again, appropriate to the company. For our female counterparts, obviously, this is a great two-piece suit. Also, pants go well. There's nothing wrong with either or. Notice she has purse as well as her briefcase. And our gentleman here has a briefcase. Now, one thing that I didn't do, I got to tell you, I didn't do a briefcase. If you haven't seen it, I carried my planner, and this is what I used. This is my personal thing, by the way. This is what I carry. And it was just, for my interviews, I walk in. I ask them, may I take notes through our interviews? I open it up, go to my notes side, flip the page, and just be able to take notes. I asked if I could, but I didn't take a briefcase. Again, that's my personal experience. I would tell you, what do you need to have in a briefcase for an interview? I feel like at least this, I can say, hey, here are my resumes, bust them out. I got business cards, here you go, pens. I felt like this planner gave me the full spectrum. And again, leather, conservative, nothing fancy. It allowed me to get the point that, okay, I'm not going to come with nothing, come with something. But either do the briefcase, the old classic one, those are always cute. But you can do any of these, regular briefcase. I just want it to be different, let me put it that way. I want to make an impact. And that was part of my transition strategy. Have something different. I'm not going to bring the briefcase. I'm going to bring this. Now, if I needed to, I went to an interview with Navy Federal. And I'm glad that I have Army and Air Force because that was the job. Navy Federal, if you haven't heard, wants to recruit Navy and Army clients. And they wanted to put me in a position to be the lead on this pioneering job. And so I brought 3 iPads. Go figure. 3 iPads to show the presentations of what I was showing for them, because part of the interview was give us a plan that you would employ to transition this into the Army. How would you're a Marine, how are you going to appeal to Army and Air Force? And I had to have a strategy. So I brought these iPads for the 3 people, and they liked that. And again, they were compact, and it was for a specific purpose. And I had my briefcase, if you will, because I had to get them out. And that was the purpose of my briefcase, or my bag, if you will. But I didn't bring it just to bring it. Okay? So I would say have a purpose. Again, that's my personal preference. You don't have to. But that's kind of how I stood out. I didn't have this bag thinking I'm the typical candidate to come and interview. I had my little planner, and that kind of did the job. Interview training. I will be very, very quick on this. Usually, on this first seminar, I ask somebody to step up and say, hey, let's go through an interview process. Let's say you're coming to do a job, and the company is X. I'll give you 10 minutes to prepare. And they would go out and come back, and the first question that I would ask is something about the company. And there's always, it's a 50-50, right? But there's always, you can always count on somebody not knowing about the very company they're going to interview with. And then I go into, did you try to look on LinkedIn if I had a profile since I'm going to interview you? No. Why would I do that? Did you check Facebook and see if I have a Facebook page? Did you check to see what the company's up to in the news? In fact, LinkedIn has part of its, one of its links up there is companies. You can find out not only about companies, but what companies are looking for and what they're hiring for, what's the latest. And those companies who have LinkedIn pages want to know if people are actually using them. And the interview never got past the point of them not doing the research. We never even got into the interview because I have them bring resumes, and I try to go through resume, and I actually look up LinkedIn and try to see if I can find something on the internet. And again, that stuff will work against you. The greatest advice I can give you on interviews, do your intel work. Not just a typical, go on Google, check out what everybody can check out. Get some details. If you know who's going to interview you, go look at their LinkedIn page. You know how fascinating it is to go look and know that Major White is going to interview me for an interview. And I know on his LinkedIn page that he was stationed in Germany. I mean, I'm using a... And he was there as the OPSO for this operation. And I start having a conversation with him about the time I was in Germany and how much I enjoyed working there as a logistician. And all of a sudden, it's not the interview anymore. I'm not being interviewed. I'm interviewing my interviewers. I know Wahe, he's a combat engineer, and I tell him about my time when I had to build a 3,000-man base camp in Korea and how I depended on those engineers because the ability to have the utility guys and the heavy equipment guys to come together to build the right base camp. All of a sudden, I was going to say, hey, I can relate to that. Remember, find the common ground. Russian linguist, Spanish speaker. Sure, there's a lot of similarities in Russian and Spanish, right? No, but we can both relate to flip pay, assignments, cultural immersion, and the ability to relate to others. Simultaneous translations where two people are trying to say something to the other and being able to adapt the true nature of their speech to what they're trying to convey, whether it's in the romantic language of Spanish by using all this historic, colorful language, to Russian where it's more like a K and and I can't speak. The only thing I know in Russian is grandmother, babuli. And that's the only thing I learned from a buddy of mine who used to speak Russian. And Yati Biali Blue. Not to either one of you guys, but any of you guys. But that's just what back when I was single, I had to remember that word in every country. And so, but see, I got a smile. I was able to really connect. And the greatest thing you can do in an interview, forget about the interview. Connect. That's John C. Maxwell's latest book, or one of his latest books. Everyone communicates. Few connect. Think about that for a minute. We are drilled in the military that you must communicate your plan, and you must tell everybody what's the mission, what's the commander's intent, concept of operations, coordinating instructions, the whole 9 yards. Do you ever stop to think, did I really connect to them? Did they really understand? You don't have to because you're the commander, right? Or you're the person in charge. At every rank level, you start getting into the point where you have to give directions and move on. Hey, execute that task, do that, do that, do that. And you have to go back and keep doing planning. Brief your CO or your superior, get his intent, issue back to the troops, and keep moving in that process. But you never get to the point where you ask, how can I more effectively connect with you? Is a more authoritative line of, we don't have to deal with that in the military. You say, hey, look, this is not democracy. You do what I tell you to do, and that's it, right? But in the civilian world, it's very critical that you connect. If you connect with your interviewers, they will never forget you. I still talk to the gal that wanted to hire me for Navy Fed. We're very good friends. And though I didn't take the job, I still find time to connect with her and find out how she's doing. Last thing, last slide that I'll talk to you about, networking. I can't tell you how profitable it is. Networking is the most profitable investment you'll ever make. I can bore you with stories about things that I always wonder, how am I going to get that done? And I reach out to my network contacts. And by the way, I don't blast people on mass emails. Bad idea. I take the time to send, this is painful, 50 individual emails to people who I believe may have an answer to this problem. I had to do a workshop for a community of Hispanic organizations in Chicago and New York. And I had to translate all these slides into Spanish. And while I could do it, I just didn't have the time. And I wanted to understand, how does strategic planning and organizational development translate into the concept, cultural concepts of Hispanic-speaking communities? Could I really just take my Marine Corps planning process capability and understanding, or my MBA understanding of strategic planning, and just give it to this community of organizers that live in a very poor community that wanted to figure out how do they organize more effectively to achieve a common goal. And I had to, reach out to a network of people, and within minutes, 10 of them said, hey, look, here's an article. Oh, here's my friend does this, and I interviewed that person, and I started to get a little more knowledge about this. What came out of that, obviously, I said, hey, would you mind doing that for us over here in Chicago? I was doing it in New York, and they wanted me to do it again in Chicago because they thought that this would be a great presentation. Another networking story, again, I went to one of the interviews in a state where I wasn't expecting to have a second interview, but because that employer found out through networking that I was going to be there, they asked me if I would stop by. I told them I wasn't prepared, but I would love to come and at least do a impromptu interview. He said, that's perfect. That's the kind of interview we like. Just come on over. We went to lunch. Little did I know that that was the interview. We never did go anywhere else. So when can you come back? Let's do a follow-up and see if you can get your family out here, and if you like it, blah, blah, blah. It's like, we're never going to do the interview. We just did. And again, I hadn't met him personally. He had heard of me from a great leader that I used to work for in Japan. I was able to get a job. In fact, that guy worked for DLA. There's a Harrisburg, I guess, outfit of DLA in Harrisburg, Pennsylvania. I always wanted to work for DLA, by the way. I thought that would be like my dream come true. But things worked out differently, and I'm happy. But it was interesting how that networking opportunity yielded others. At the same time, I've had so many people that I've met through networking that I would have never met. Experienced people that I need a database built for a client, or I need some technical expertise, or I need Russian speakers. I told you I bid on a project for the Sabbath program. I don't know any Russians or Russian speakers. But within a day of posting this on my network, I had over 20 highly qualified Russian speakers, all the way from just typical 2++ with some scores to people who have been doing it for years. As one of them used to work for the ambassador to Russia, American ambassador to Russia, as one of the advisors, aides, or translators. I don't know what it was. So networking is going to be the most valuable thing you do, whether you transition today or in 10 years. Start networking now. Try to meet a new person. Well, you just met a new person today. But tomorrow, meet a new person. And don't underestimate the power of networking. Stay in touch with me. I would love to help you out. You got my email address. My first name, Cesar, at callxcorp.com. And let me know how I can provide you with any more support in your transition whenever that happens. Final questions, comments, thoughts that I didn't cover or that you think that you want to know about? Well, man, I must be really good. That's the first time. I think it's the mic. Intimidates people.
I do have one, but I'll ask you when we're done.
No, it might be interesting for everyone.
Oh, it's fine.
Okay. First Sergeant?
Sergeant First Class.
Marine Corps.
It's all good.
Sergeant First Class. Go ahead, and thank you.
Well, just wanted to officially thank you, Cesar, for coming out and speaking with us today. I think this opens up the opportunity to create a very good relationship between you and the agency. And we've now got eyewitnesses that can go out amongst the rank and file and tell them what they saw here today, and the capability and the network that you bring along with yourself when you come and speak. And my goal is the next one that we do, I want 50 people out here and give you a better audience to talk to.
Let me add one more thing, and I'll say this also for everybody here. My goal is never to cater to numbers, but if I made a difference in at least one of you, and anything that I said today was valuable to you, I am thrilled to have been able to pay it forward, because somebody gave it to me. And I wanted to be able to say that whether it's 1 or 100 or 200, it doesn't matter. If somebody got something valuable that makes them more successful, and again, even more successful than I did in their transition strategy. So I'm grateful for the opportunity, and look forward to helping as many more veterans as I can, because that's the only way that we're all going to be able to transition properly and effectively as we did when we became military members. So thank you very much. Semper Fi. Hoorah. And thank you guys. Appreciate it. And I'll be here for any questions if you need me. I'll stay here until it's just 10 minutes. Thank you so much.